Hello everybody, welcome back to the training of the EcoStruxure Operator Terminal Expert. In this video, we are going to see an overview of the software so we can start programming one of the HMIs. So let's go to the software. Once you install the EcoStruxure Operator Terminal Expert, you will find this icon, okay? In this case, I'm working with the Service Pack version 3.2 Service Pack 1, and I believe it's going to be the Service Pack 2 soon. So we just need to open this. I have open it. Good. So when you open the EcoStruxure Operator Terminal Expert, there are some useful videos over here, okay, in the middle of the screen, just to get it started, okay. But one of the important things here is the help, okay. If you open the help, you can see this screen. In my case, I need to allow content. Here, you have best definition of what you can do with each HMI, okay. And if you go to feature guide before use, you can see in the what's new in each version of the software. Okay, so this can help you to give you an idea what are the new features and so on. And then you have in each part of here a better explanation of each component of the software. Okay, so this one is very useful. Now, how we can start this? It's very simple. You have in the left part, new project, or you can go over here to start a new project. Here, we have this Show System Explorer. This Show System Explorer allows you to save in a specific location your software, okay? I should use it more, but to be honest, I never use it. So, let's start with new project. Wait for this to finish. Mhm. So, how we can start with this? If we go to the system architecture, okay, if we click over here, the target, you're gonna see your screen. By default is this one, okay? And if we go to the favorites on the properties on the right part, we can see how you can transfer the program, okay? And the preferences for the HMI. If we go over here, we should be able to change this, okay, to the HMI series that we want. I'm going to cancel this, okay? And once you have selected the application and you have already developed it, this icon over here is to transfer. At the transfer will depend on the type that you have used. Okay, Ethernet, USB cable, or file system using a USB pen drive. Okay, you can put the files over there in order to install the application. If you're using the trial version, this option will be disabled. Okay, and in this part you can also simulate the HMI, okay, and also you can simulate the device simulate. This one is like having no real PLC, okay, you just have the HMI and you will not have the problems of communication if you don't have any PLC or other device connected. So we're gonna cover that later. So once you have already defined the HMI, okay, based in here, the property, favorite, we're gonna cover that later, but if you're going to use the HMI to communicate with another device, okay, for example, PLC, here you can have the driver. If you're used to use Vijeo Designer, probably the normal instinct here will be to use the right click, okay, you can hear the right click, but in EcoStruxure Operator Terminal Expert, the right click doesn't work, okay, it doesn't do anything. That's why we need to use the left click, okay, but depending on the selection that we are using here in the left part, we're going to see different kind of buttons. This one, for example, driver. The driver button, for example, will be able, okay, once we are on the driver folder. And in here, we have the possibility to define the drivers that we are going to use. For example, if we are going to use Schneider PLC, you have the possibility to use, for example, the Machine Expert, okay, for the M2.1, M2.1, as you can see here, the list, okay. And if you're using, for example, Model TCP connection, you can use this, okay, on the tail wheel. And if you want to communicate with the Celio, you can do it over there, okay. Let's, for example, add this one, just so you can see. Here, once you add the driver, you can see the device you have connected over there, and then you can play with it and change it. And also, when you click over here, you can see in the right part more information, okay. We're going to cover later this part, how we can communicate for different PLCs. But now I'm just going to give you an overview or of what are all the important tools or features of the HMIs, okay? Just to cover the basic. So let's continue. Once you have configured the drive, okay, it is important to use the variables. So depend on the driver that you are using, okay, you can use this symbol link, okay. This symbol link allows you to, for example, if you're using Soul Machine, okay, to directly import the variables Soul Machine or Machine Expert, okay, import the variables. Also using Unity Pro, okay, you can see here how you can import the variables, okay. For example, Soul Machine here, it allows you to see different files, okay, how you can import it and so on. But we want to cover that later. This one is to easily import the variables, but if you are, for example, using another device, you can specify here the variables that you want to use. Okay, the type, for example, integer, define the variable, and in the right part of the screen, you always have the favorite, which are by default assigned by the system. Otherwise, you can go to the left to different properties, okay? And if you want, you can assign more to the favorites, okay? Scan rate. Just an overview. And in here, if you want to define the variable, the address, you can over here, okay, or in the right part when you have the variable. But you will need to define if it's internal, okay, or it comes from the outside. Then you should be able to modify this. Okay, this is just a quick overview. Now, you can have all the variables over here, but if you want to organize this, if you take a look here, all variables, now in the top left part, instead of seeing driver, you see folders. Here you can add folders to separate the different variables, okay, so you can assign them and see it much better. Okay, so this is the visualization, the new visualization. Okay, so this part is very simple. We should see what is the HMI to select, the driver so you can communicate with the external device, and how you can add the different variables that come from the PLC. So let's continue with this. Now, another thing that you can do with the variables, okay, is to define this all user data types, and it's divided in structures and in arrays. So you can define the array, okay, for example, array the word, dimension 3, and for example, in structure, I'm going to define a structure, and in the structure, we're going to use a word variable, and in the structure, we're going to use a Boolean variable, for example, okay? So once you have this, okay, you can see that on the variables, it doesn't change. We only have two of them, which is the one that is in the beginning and the other one in the folder. So this one only allows you to define different types of structures or arrays. Then on the variables, you will need to define which is the type of the variable that you have defined. So here, instead of using this standard, I'm going to use the one that I created. You can see here the array, the 3 dimensions, and then I'm going to select the type structure. You can see it adds the variable as a type structure 1, which is the one I have defined over here, name structure 1. So this is just an idea how you can work with the variables, okay? Now, once you have the variables and you want to program something, you have what we call here screens. So In the screen design, okay, when you are in this view, you can see here that you have different properties. This will be covered later, okay, just to um, not mix topics. Okay, so you have screens. And in the screens, in order to add it, there is no right click, I'm clicking, okay. You just need to go into the top. And here you can define folders, you can see, and you can define different navigations. We're gonna cover later. I'm not going into this direction. But if you want to create different contents or different screens, okay, you can create this. Add, and here you have different container types. We're going to cover that later. We're going to find as a canvas. And here you have another screen. Okay, I have another one here, and this is the space where you need to program. So now, once you click on the screen, okay, you can see here in the Project Explorer that you have the toolchart. If you select the toolchart, here you can find the different objects that you can use on the HMI. So, for example, something simple, the numeric display, drag and drop. Okay, remember that there is no right button, right click. So if you click drag and drop into the system, you can see the different properties that we have. You have the favorites, this is by default, and then you have the functions, shapes, and so on. So if you want to visualize something, this is, if we compare, for example, this with Vijeo, the Operator Terminal Expert have the possibility to access to different properties of each object. For example, if you go to the basic, no, this one, shape, you can go deeper and deeper in the different attributes and configuration for each object, and you can link that to different variables. Okay, so we're gonna cover that later, but just to let you know that you can go deeper and deeper on each object, and you can also use the properties of each object to link it to a different variables that we're gonna cover that later. So if we continue with this, for example, if you want to visualize something just with the numeric display, you can see here the current value. And next to it, there is this square. Okay, if you click the square, you can see here the current value and can be linked to a different kind of type of variable. So I'm going to use this one, the yellow one, the variable. If you select this, you can see the variables that we have already created. For example, this one, okay? And you also have the possibility to define if this variable is one way or two way. What does it mean? So one way, it means that you only be reading this variable, and two way, it means that you're going to read and write this value. So this converter, we're going to cover that later, okay? But I'm just going to let you know this part. So, okay, and you also need to enable this part, okay? Otherwise, you can see this part. And if you, for example, define this kind of variable as a one way, okay, you're gonna see the red indication that something is wrong because you haven't enabled the input mode, okay? So if you want to only show the variable, select the variable as a one way, and then disable the input mode. If you want to use the two ways, then enable the input mode. Simple as that. Then you have different set of colors that we're going to cover that in another video, okay? In case you don't want to see this in green. But you also have the possibility to change for each object the colors, okay? You can use ID or RGB, and then you have um, the full define the full definition of colors that you can use. Okay, and ID you just have from 1 and I believe 50, 60. Okay, so this is how you can use the HMI to show a variable. If you want, for example, to jump between different pages, you can use the switch. Okay, and operation type, and then you can specify to a screen change. And in the screen change, you can use the a previous or a specific ID. And the ID, once we have defined the screens, you can see here that you have S0001. This is the ID for each screen that we are working with. Okay, so for example, if I click this one, only the screen, okay, you can see in the right part the screen ID having changed. For example, if I change this to 10, okay, you can see that the ID has been changed over here. Okay, this is how you can work with this. Regarding the contents, okay, I'm going to cover that in another video, okay, but they are quite useful. So you just need to go over here, select that, add content. You have different kind of contents, so I'm going to cover that later, okay, and let me just check this, okay. You can define the size of the content, okay, it's like a similar pop-up, but you have different properties. They are quite useful and interesting. I believe I have already made some kind of video about this, but we're gonna cover that later. So this is for the content. Then, what is different compared with Vijeo Designer at the moment? I believe in the future we're gonna have some differences here. You have scripts, okay, and you have a global script, and in each HMI or each screen, okay, you have the possibility to change between a screen and a script. So this one is like the actions. If you are used to Vijeo designers, this should be like the actions. So here in the script, okay, you should be able to, at the moment, only use blocks, okay, and in order to see those blocks, we just need to change the view of this. Instead of using Project Explorer, we just need to go to Toolchas. If we select Toolchas, you can see here that the objects have been changed, okay, and here has the function blocks. You need to program in blocks this, okay. So for example, you remember that if I change screen, you see the other toolchas. So for example, this one is the switch one, so I'm going to call this switch change value, okay. I have changed the name of this. So remember that I told you before that here in the Operator Terminal Expert, we have the possibility to go deeper and deeper on the object variables. And this is what we're going to do now. So imagine that I'm going to the script, and in order to change a value or something, I'm going to execute the value change, okay, of a different value only when I press the button. So what we can do is the following. We need we we have defined these blocks in different kind of blocks. So if we go here, we have triggers, operation, values, logic, and expression. So in order to activate this script or one part of the script, we need to use a trigger. And in a trigger, we have touch, periodic, conditional, screen content, blah, 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 blah. You have a lot of things like this. We're going to cover that later. But for example, when I touch that button, okay, when click, you have different option. When click, you will need to define what. So you need to define values. For example, in this case, I'm going to use a screen object. So once I press or I click one of the objects that I have on the screen, if I click over here, we're going to see the objects. And you can see here the object, the switch. When I click this one, then I can execute something. And to execute something, you have the operations. So you can specify this one, value change. Okay, you can set something, for example, one of the variables that we have, operation values, variables, okay, variable, one of the variables, I don't remember which one it is, but for example, this one, and then you can assign another value, a constant value or the value of the other variable. So here you can define the number uh, 10. So when I click this, oops, when I click screen, when I click this button, we are going to move one of the values, this value 10, to this variable. So instead of using text as in Vijeo Designer, we have the possibility to use blocks. These blocks in order to execute the logic. These scripts are similar to the actions that we have, okay? Local actions that we have, but instead of using the scripts as we saw in Vijeo Designer, we use blocks in here. And in the global actions, okay, we have the possibility to use the same, okay? But global action toolchest, there are some objects that are not able to use. As you can see here, the touch and other ones, because this one is a global and you need to define uh, what to execute, but we're going to cover that later. So this has the local actions for each screen, and then we have the global script. Then one of the important things or the basic things that we need to use is the alarms. So if we go to alarms, okay, you can see here there is nothing, okay? But what we need to do in order to start this is to add one alarm group. And if you select the all alarms here, you can see in the left part that you have the alarm group. So you will need to add one alarm group to the system in order to define which kind of alarm you are going to work with. So you have Boolean and you have level. So here you have the possibility, once you click one of these, the other alarm, okay, then associate the alarm with a variable that you have, okay. The system is clever enough to only identify the Boolean variables, as you can see. I have other variables, but it only identifies the one that I have defined, okay. And here you have the trigger condition. If it's not triggered like this, it will trigger by 0. If you click this one, by 1. And you have different properties that I believe I already covered. Once you have selected this one, on the right part you can see the message, and this one will be the message that you're going to see on the screen, similar to the level alarm. Okay, then you have the recipes, okay, and the login loops. Here the same. Once you click on the login or login here, this option will appear over here. And here you will need to assign the variables and how you're going to trigger this. Okay. Of course, this I'm going to see that later, but I'm just going to show you the basic stuff. The same for the recipes. Okay. You have the recipes and then the control. And here in the control you have the family. And in the family here you can define the ingredients. Okay. And select the recipe. Then what is important here is the security. So here is the same. You have the possibility to go to the settings, okay, just to cover and define how you want to work with the security in the system, okay. And the important thing here is that in order to start with this, you will need to add a group. So user group, you can define different user groups, and then in each group you can define a user, okay. And if you want, you can show password and so on, okay. Description, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you have everything in here. Okay, so you can start working with. We're gonna cover that later. You have the language table. This is gonna cover later and deeper. And then something useful here are the converters that allows you to easily change some values depending on the type. Okay, there are 4 converters, but this one is a good topic and probably going to show you that later in a specific video for this one. So what we have done here is to define or have an overview of the things that we can do, how we can start with the basic stuff. So what we're going to do later is go step by step about the navigation, how to use different scripts, how to use different variables. No, let me just change the screen here. how to use different objects and how we can change some of the characteristics and how to work with them. Um, Later, what we're going to do is how we can use, that is very simple, how we can use the web viewer of the HMI so you can um, connect to the HMI and see, for example, in a laptop or in another device, how you can replicate the application that you have in your smartphone or in the laptop so you can monitor and control the HMI. So um, this is it for the moment. Okay, we have seen an overview of where you can find some of the stuff of the software. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I see you on the next one.